Hey, folks, welcome to the Generational Gap. Hey, looks like we're having something technical go on with both Twitch and YouTube tonight. So we are coming at you on D Live. Still waiting to see what's going on with YouTube and why it's not picking up. Everything is set correct. I've double-checked everything, so there's no reason why. Restream is connecting with YouTube and talking to it, so it should be sending it too. Unless we've done something I don't know. Now, see, Twitch just finally went online. So who knows? YouTube might be picking up. We'll have to see if it finally kicks in. But until then, hey, hi, it's Robert. Welcome to Generational Gap. I'm Robert, your resident Gen Xer, and right over there, John.
Right here.
John, our resident millennial. John, how are you doing this evening?
A little flustered now, but we're all right. We're pretty good.
It's an odd one. We don't usually have issues with YouTube too much.
I know. I thought our technical issues were over.
But this one has got to specifically be YouTube. It
is.
So check it out. They're talking about it right now. State of emergency in Atlanta. It says D-Live is jerky. Well, I've got strong signal coming out, so
yeah, it's better than YouTube is at the moment.
Yeah,
at least.
YouTube is not getting anything at all, but everything is sending stream elsewhere. So other stuff, I don't know. It's a crazy batshit world. Hey, so there's a state of emergency in Atlanta, and so they I guess the mayor of Atlanta, she kind of got fed up. I guess yesterday, for 4th of July protests, was it last night? An 8-year-old girl was shot. A woman had her child in the car, was trying to go into park her car somewhere. There were a bunch of protesters in front of the entrance to where she was going to park, and they opened fire on the car and wound up shooting the little girl, who got to the hospital, but they could not save her life, and she died from injuries. And so the mayor of Atlanta, his chief of police, are like, "Fuck it, we've had enough. It's done. It's time for you folks to pack it up and go home." So I'm guessing this is a response to that. To start clearing it out, closing it down. 8-year-old child is getting shot in a car. I guess that's their line in the sand.
I mean, that's not that different than a normal day in Atlanta. I guess it's just that has more publicity than it normally would get.
Well, yes and no. A bunch of people opening fire on a car is not necessarily a normal thing happening.
Yeah, usually the shots are coming from inside the car, right?
It's like a drive-by or something to that effect, and but I mean, you have to ask yourself, when are people going to get fed up with this ongoing? I mean, we're seeing, it's just stuff happening everywhere. Did you see what happened in Baltimore? They tore down a statue of Christopher, not Baltimore. Was it Baltimore? Not Baltimore. I think it was, maybe. But Christopher Columbus statue, they brought down the statue and then threw it into the harbor.
Baltimore, I remember that. Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. That was a thing. Kind of all sorts of crazy shit like this popping off. So, I don't know what's the line in the sand, John? When do you gotta, you take a moment and put yourself in the shoes. There you go, John. You're in those shoes. What do you do?
Fit.
What do you do when an 8-year-old child is shot in a car by protesters in this ongoing madness?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you gotta just shut the process down. I mean, it should have been done before, but I mean, what are you gonna do? Especially when we know how violent they are. It's time. Especially being like a governor, which I assume is who you're talking about.
Well, I think the mayor. Well, yeah,
or the
mayor's got to coordinate
way,
with the governor. Yes.
Either way, that's not good looks, and you've got an election coming up. I mean, yeah, it's nothing out of the ordinary for a normal day there, but again, this has a lot more publicity. So, yeah, kind of to make the optics look good, you got to just shut it down.
And that's so but I do hear something from you from a that's not optics. Okay, I do believe there's a certain part of you that thinks there's a lot of this that should have been shut down already. Right, a lot of the stuff that's been going on over the last couple of months.
Yeah.
Does that does that idea of needing to do that grate against your libertarian values?
I mean, not when they're destroying property and, stopping, like, mostly just destruction of property is what I'm thinking of at the moment. And it's not just the property for the property's sake. This is a mistake that a lot of people make. And it's what an argument that I'm going to be making later. Um, that, okay, yeah, you destroyed a business, looted it, and yeah, they have insurance, fantastic. But now the employees who work there don't have anywhere to work. Who do you think's got to clean that up? Who think's got to pay to clean that up? You know what I mean? It has a lot more lasting effects than just like, oh, I get an insurance check and I get to go my fucking merry way. You know what I mean? Like, you're destroying communities by destroying the businesses around them.
Okay,
and killing 8-year-olds
okay,
as well.
So shifting it to a different focus, in a sense, if the destruction was specifically targeted at things like statues, uh, government run or public facilities, as it were, government buildings, government establishments, does that make enough of a difference that it doesn't need to be shut down, or does it still just fall into a general category of destruction of property?
Yeah, I mean, it's public property. It's still property. Even if it was, created with stolen money.
I mean, because a lot of people have made the argument, these people should be targeting government buildings, not private property and stores, things like this. People, they should be focused on government buildings, and I'm like, that to me that doesn't necessarily make it okay, right? Just
right.
Because you're switching the focus to the government, as it were.
Right.
We've got who all we got out there? We've got Elephant.
You got a
Man.
bunch of people.
We've got Ed's in there. I see Wyatt in there. We've got a little bit of is that the Company Man? Do I see the Company?
Yeah, that's Company Man, dude.
Company Man there. It's like we're popular on D-Live. Yeah. See, fuck you too. I don't know. Maybe they don't like us anymore. Maybe that's what.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. It really pissed me off.
Yeah,
I wanted this episode on there. God damn it.
Well, we can always upload it, I think, if we rip it off something else. I don't know how, but
I don't know how. Someone else does.
Ed
They're
could
smart.
probably tell me what to do.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, I don't know. It's gotten to this point where I'm like, okay, we can shut it down, but how are libertarians going to look at this anymore? I mean, are a lot more libertarians going to make the argument that, oh, well, you've waited too long to shut it down. Now you're doing it as just abuse of power. I mean, there's enough liberal thinking in the Libertarian Party to take that approach. Am I correct?
Wait, what'd you say? The last bit?
I said
It's the last bit.
I was just saying, is there enough left in the Liberal Party to take that tact with this, that it's too little too late if for when people do it now, that it's going to be stepping on liberty if you start shutting it down, the different cities?
Shutting down like the protesters and stuff?
Yeah. I mean,
no, it's gone on long enough, and they've proven that they can't assemble peacefully, and so they're not covered under the First Amendment anymore.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. That's important here. But anyway, so I mean, ultimately, it goes back to the all of this falls under the NAP in a sense, right? Like either you're following the precepts of the First Amendment,
right?
Or
what's
been
part
going
of it,
on
right?
is a violation of the NAP.
Right, they're violating other people's, rights in general, mostly to property, but also to, physical harm. And so they forfeit their own rights, you no longer have the right to peaceably assemble or otherwise, which is what it's mostly been. And yeah, exactly what Elephant Man said. I was just about to say this. They were hoping Trump would put the boot down, and I've said that before on the show. But that's what it's about. They want him right before an election to do something stupid like declaring martial law, or some kind of thing or especially something the military in, something so they can show, look, he's a fascist dictator and shit like that. But he hasn't done it, which I think is commendable.
Well, okay. But you know where my argument's going to be about that, right? It's just going to be the blowhardery that's gone along with him not doing anything.
That's fine, because they can't
threat to do something, right?
They can't point to him being a fascist dictator if he hasn't acted like a fascist dictator.
But weren't there enough? Don't you think support was strong enough would have been strong enough in the country that if he had brought the boot down himself, that it would? I mean, people want this to be done.
I think people said that they wanted it to be done. I think that if you were actually to roll the military in there, like people watched it happen, I think that the perception would quickly change.
Would it? Well, what do you say? I mean, that's what that's where it comes down to is, where do you see? Is he making a bad move by putting the boot down, which I think should have happened?
Yeah, I think that's a bad move to put the boot down. As the president. Now, the governors, they can handle it however they want, and they probably should be trying to, nudge it in the right direction at least, if not, fully bring the boot down. So.
And then he just turns around and plays the political game and calls them out for being slow to task.
Right. Well, he's letting them do their job. Imagine that, right? A public official having to do their job? How crazy.
Well, yes.
Instead of passing the buck to someone else.
Yeah, I mean, he pulled that shit. He pulled that shit with Minneapolis, but they already had the National Guard mobilized, etc., coming in and planning to do a thing before he ever started hollering at them that they needed to bring the National Guard.
Yeah, I mean, but again, that doesn't matter. The facts aren't what's important.
For those that think it matters. I mean,
it's the optics. The optics are the most important thing.
I know,
the
and isn't it sad?
Are maybe secondary, but most likely tertiary in consideration.
I don't know. Elephant Man agrees. He says the mayors and governors have to take responsibility, and yes, they do.
That's their
job. To take a certain level of responsibility. But I mean, that shit has come knocking hard on the front door of the White House, and I'm like, look, lead by example, brother. Lead by example.
Well, that's not
show us what you do in your part of town.
No. That's the mayor of DC's job. He's not responsible for running DC.
Well, there you go, and therein lies the rub, right?
Yeah.
The perfect out for him. No, I'm just, I just get tired of hearing. I'm going to touch you. 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 I will touch you. I will. I will. Look right there. I'm going to touch you. It just gets annoying. I'm just saying. Notice how annoying it was just in that moment that I did it.
Yeah, it was a little annoying.
All right. So, speaking of libertarians, I hear that you are one sometimes, John.
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes you practice a little bit of that.
When it suits me, you know.
Right. When it's fashionable.
Haha, fashionable.
Fascistable. All right,
Indeed.
so there was something that you wanted to talk about, and I'm going to be honest with you. I did give it a cursory watch, and I did listen to him somewhat, but I have to tell you, I don't like this guy.
Yeah,
not that I don't like what he has to say. I don't like the way he delivers it because it's all, I don't know. He's wishy-washy. I mean, no offense to the guy, but, it's like, not wishy-washy, I guess it's not, I don't know. He just talks in circles.
Yeah.
And I don't like people that talk in circles. That's my job. I mean, come on.
Right. It's your job to argue in circles using circular logic. Oh shit, wanking cunts. Well, you're about to see a real wanking cunt in a minute. You wait a second.
So, do you? I've got the video that you requested pulled up, and blah blah blah. Probably should have tested it. Just.
Yeah, probably should have made sure that we can, play it correctly.
Oh, well, I don't think there's any problem with that. I just, make sure my size. It's more about sizing, making sure I've got the size right, and it looks good on the screen. Because you want it to look good, John. You want it to be sassy. But anyway, so why don't you, in your best boomer voice, give us an idea of what's going on, what this guy's going to be talking about.
Oh God! So this guy is going to try and debunk the NAP, the non-aggression principle. This is the same guy from last Monday, by the way, who tried and hilariously failed, in my opinion, to debunk taxation as theft. And so we're back again with another one from him. This Burgis guy who wrote a book, Logic for the Left or whatever. Give them an argument. Logic for the Left is what it's called. So I'm going to be debunking this guy who is trying to debunk the NAP. And if this guy, the guy pictured in the top left, there with his fluffy dog, if that is not like the quintessential stereotypical look for a soy boy leftist, I don't know what the hell is. I mean, that dude is...
John, that's racist.
He's just all of the stereotypes.
John, that's racist. You can't say things like that.
I think I can. I mean, the dude is... Oh, man. This is going to be fun.
I think you've got a crush on him.
Yeah. I know. You don't need two mouth breathers in one room. That's all right.
All right. So I've gone like 3 minutes into this to get the initial stuff out of the way. But basically, as you can see, he's going to be he's talking about debunking the non-aggression principle. Dun dun dun. Because it's not a real thing. It's just it's a what are they?
It's a social construct.
It's a social construct. I mean,
yeah, no shit, it is though. Right? It really is though. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, you can't hear. Stop not going. It sucks. What does that mean?
Wait, what happened?
I don't know. It says stop not going. It sucks. I don't know what that means.
I think, okay, now he's saying to go, otherwise it'll suck, I guess. I don't know. Let's just go.
Who's that guy again?
Soy-based. Midget B?
Yeah.
He's the midget.
What you're advocating is a violation of non-aggression principle, and that this is just such an obvious moral principle, it's just absurd to be opposed to it. And what they kind of make it sound like is like it's almost an extension of pacifism or something that's like just short of pacifism, that you shouldn't initiate force against people. And, that sounds good. Violence is bad. Force is bad. So, so it sounds like, okay, if it would be justifiable to use force and violence, it would only be in self-defense, so you shouldn't initiate it. So this sounds great. But then you start thinking a little bit about the details. What exactly do you mean by that? Because the way I just put it, which is the way they make it sound, that you shouldn't initiate force against people, if that were it, that in other words, that the principle were don't cause any kind of physical harm or threaten any kind of physical harm to another person who hasn't caused or threatened physical harm to you. If that were really it, then that this principle would not only not ground the kind of fundamentalist property rights that they want, it would actually rule out the very existence of any kind of property at all. Because if you want to make an exclusive claim to a piece of property, what you're doing is you're saying, hey, nobody else is allowed to use this, which if it means anything at all is a threat of force. So say you have a no trespassing sign in the lawn, that is a threat of some sort of force against a person who has done nothing but trespass on the property. And, of course, trespassing on the property doesn't mean that...
Okay. So he's trying to say that basically it doesn't cover property, and that if you, especially at the end there where you said, if you put a sign out in your yard saying, no trespassing, that's a threat of force, and therefore a NAP violation is what I'm thinking he's trying to say.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, I think
if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
By putting it, what I gained from that so far is that what he's saying is that it's almost a hypocrisy, because by putting the no trespassing sign out on your property, you are intimating that there will be some sort of violent recourse should you trespass on the property. Right. You've initiated an action that's going to generate an aggressive response. So in doing so, you are almost initiating the aggressive response by intimating that there would be one.
Right, which is total bullshit, because all you were saying is...
It's psychobabble. It's psychobabble.
Yeah, it's obviously... Well, let me explain why it's ridiculous, so we're not just, not strawmanning, but we're just not, ad hominem him. God damn, that's hard to say. But yeah, no, I mean, it's not, because all you are doing is warning that if you violate the NAP here, then we will violate you the rest of the way. Is basically what it's saying.
Right.
So it's basically a warning, just saying if you come onto this property, then you have violated the NAP and you are forfeiting your rights from here on out.
Well, what can a warning be?
No, it's a threat for sure.
Yeah,
but
that's it right there.
Right, it's a conditional threat based on your actions.
Sure, but he's just trying to play the mind angle that you are initiating a threat by putting out the sign. You are initiating an aggressive action by putting out the sign.
But you're not. It's a defensive
I get
not
it.
An aggressive action.
Right, but you're not. But how is it a defensive move if no one has trespassed? Right. See, so
the body stacked in the yard. So.
Right. But I mean, if I haven't trespassed, why do you need to threaten me? Right.
So that you can keep living. I want you to live, Robert.
Well, that was an aggressive thought that you had, thinking that I was going to trespass in the first place. Now your thought police are coming, pal. There you go.
For sure. Yeah, we can keep going now.
That caused physical harm to you, or they threatened physical harm to you. Now, of course, what they'll say when like when they're trying to be more precise, is, well, no. What we mean is that you shouldn't initiate force against other people or their property. Now, at that point, that already gets a little confusing, because, I know what it is to threaten or, harm or threaten harm against a person, but I don't really know what it is to use force or violence against property, right? Inanimate objects, aren't the sort of things that we could commit acts of violence about.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is he really that dense?
I refuse to accept that he's an idiot. I think that he is just not a liar, but he is framing it. He's strawmanning it. He's framing it in such a way that it's easy to defeat.
I'm just like, okay, I can immediately think of 5 different aggressive actions you can take against property.
Yeah.
Very quickly. I mean, it's not called arson for nothing, right?
Right.
I mean,
right, exactly.
Oren Nimni had a great article in Current Affairs a couple of years ago called Defining Violence, where he does some really nice, he makes some nice moves making fun of this idea that you can have violence against property. So what it really means is, well, you shouldn't initiate force against other people or violate their property claims. That you shouldn't initiate force against other people or take away their property. And of course, what's really doing all the work, what's actually in dispute in all these political arguments, is the second part, the part that has absolutely nothing to do with violence. That's, in fact, the part that, has nothing to do with not initiating violence. In fact, the part that allows you to initiate violence in defense of property. So it's okay now, according to this principle, to initiate violence against somebody, to use violence against somebody who hasn't used or threatened violence against you in order to stop them from taking away your property. And now this has already started to sound a whole lot less like pacifism or something just short of pacifism.
It's because it's not supposed to be
like it sounded like at first. Now you're saying that if the government has given you this, slip of paper saying that you're the owner of something, then you're allowed to use violence to stop other people from infringing on it. So,
okay, so now there is some, I don't want to say validity to what he's saying, but the argument can be made that just because I step on your lawn doesn't mean I'm aggressing your property and you have a right to kill me.
Sure.
Or does it? That's because that ultimately, I listen to what people, say in our Discord and all different places that we talk to these folks. Like you said, stacking bodies on the lawn, so where does the NAP fall in when it comes to defending something like that? What is the responsibility in that defensive move?
So I think the responsibility is on the person to determine the motivation of the person that's on their property. A lot of the time that's easy. They're, they have the black pants and the black pullover, mask and the white and black striped shirt, they got a big sack over their shoulder and they're trying to get into your house, you know what I mean? Like the stereotypical robber. You could probably figure out what he's there for. You don't just someone steps on one of your blades of grass and you just fucking blow them away.
Well, that's where I'm, that's where I have to ask. It's like, there is a line between shoot first, ask questions later. I mean, is that an expected part? Is it the unspoken part of the NAP, or does the NAP clearly define that kind of idea? Because
the NAP is a guiding principle. Right. It's a guiding principle. It's not like a law or a rule in and of itself. Right. It's just something that you use to guide actions and decide, basically what things are okay and what aren't.
But we kind of live in a time where people need rules to live by.
Well, that's not my problem. Well, I'll make them some rules if they want some rules. All right.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. If people are going to follow the NAP as an idea, it's good to have rules for that. People are going to need that. You need specificity in what you can.
People need to stop being fucking idiots then.
Well, he stepped on my lawn.
Yeah.
What do I do?
So this is already pretty far from where we started, but now we run into the same problem that we were talking about 2 weeks ago in the taxation theft debunk, which is that really they wouldn't say, what they would say is, no, Ben, you just strawman me. I'm not saying that you can't.
Yep, I did too.
I'm not saying that it's because the government has given you this slip of paper. It's not about being the legal owner. It's about being the rightful owner. So in the Dave Smith thing, the part of the problem segment, he made a big deal about objecting to my use of the phrase morally entitled, even though that's actually the language that I lifted straight from libertarian philosophers, Robert Nozick and Murray Rothbard, who talk that way, but whatever. The phrase he wants to use is rightful owner, but if by rightful you mean morally rightful, then it's the same deal. Once again, you're saying that it's okay to initiate violence only to defend property that's morally right that you should have. And of course, at that point, it's a totally empty principle because, of course, everybody agrees that you should enforce whatever the distribution of property that it's right to have is. Right?
That's where he starts getting all fucky, watch.
Take things, on a whim I can't, just walk up to you and take your phone or vice versa. So whatever the right distribution of property is, we can enforce that. But of course, this is just begging the question. This is assuming the thing that needs to be proved, because what's actually in dispute between libertarians and everybody else, certainly between those of us who support redistribution of wealth and libertarians, is whether the existing distribution of wealth is just, in which case we should enforce that, or whether a redistribution would be just, in which case we enforce that. And, either way, it has absolutely nothing to do with force and violence. The kind of rhetorical moves that they'll use in this.
Because it absolutely does. So he's talking about, redistribution of wealth. Well, how do you redistribute wealth? You take it from one person and you give it to another person. What if that person doesn't want to give it up? You have to initiate violence on that person in order to get their things. So, yes, you are absolutely inflicting violence on a person. At the very least, what you are doing is coercion and extortion, at the very least. And then murder, of course, at the worst.
But you have to bear in mind that people like this have a very a fuzzy gray logic when it comes to violence. Like, in a situation like this, if no blood is spilled, it wasn't taken violently. But in the case of racism or something like that, if you say a word, the words are violent.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
but I just want to concentrate on what he's saying, though, because he hasn't said that here, at least. So I don't want to.
Well, no. But he doesn't. I don't think he sees it as violence because it's not a physical act of violence to take that money if it's done, as you said, through coercion. In that way, they don't see that as violent because the ends justify the means.
Right. Yeah. I mean that's basically where he's coming from.
So it's a definition of what you consider violence versus what he considers violence.
Right. And that does seem to be the fundamental disagreement here.
And that begins to become a question. It's like, okay, so especially when you're talking about the NAP. So now you talk about coercion. Now coercion falls into the idea of an aggressive act. It is seen, or that's how it seems to me, that it becomes an aggressive act that can be defended with violence of your own.
Mm-hmm.
Am I correct there, or?
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
Expression talk to make. Like, if you watch, your co-host on that other show that you do, Sam Cedar, has taught, like when he's debating libertarians, sometimes you'll watch them like make a really big deal about this move. They'll say like, oh, so, you're okay with like throwing people in a cage if they don't pay their taxes. And of course the right response is, yeah, okay. But you're okay with throwing people in a cage if they try to take property that, according to you, is not rightfully theirs, right? So either way, we're enforcing some sort of property claim. We're just disagreeing about which property claims to enforce. And, even if you're an anarcho-capitalist and you think it should be like a private militia and a private prison or whatever, it's the same shit. It's just less accountable.
Right. So all of a sudden we're getting a lot more grubby than like, hey, man, just like everybody should be at peace.
Yeah, totally. The way they want to present it, really, it's the whole argument is just an elaborate rhetorical trick.
Right.
That the thing that's doing all the work is the claim that existing property claims are justified and should be respected. Right? That's the core of it. But by rallying through this totally redundant non-aggression principle that just says, hey, whatever the morally right property claims are should be enforced, they're making it sound like it's a matter of, hey, man, everybody should just be at peace.
And then the other thing that I would always add to this, with my orientation and kind of, occurs in the book that I'm working on with some sort of, actually I think some overlap, is then always the problem of how does all of this start? And that becomes actually a really significant problem for them. So I remember even in one exchange that actually Sam did have with who's that really nutty guy? Professor Murray Block? Professor Block.
You're not narrowing it down right now.
I know. I'm not narrowing it at all, but I think it was Professor Block. I don't remember. Walter Block. And Block, conceded. Essentially, it was just like, well, when it comes to essentially committing genocide against Native Americans and taking their land in a pretty, extravagant violation of the non-aggression principle, well, that's just tough because
so stop there.
We're just gonna start.
Yeah. So this is the part I was waiting for because I knew this argument was coming up the first time I watched this. He's saying, taking the land from Native Americans was a huge violation of the NAP, which is true. However, the idea of the NAP wasn't really around at that time. It wasn't libertarians who were taking over, the native lands. So that's a straw man to begin with. That the people who believe in that weren't even there, for one thing.
Sure, but that would go counter to the idea that they have that present day people need to be responsible for the actions of their ancestors.
Right, which is obviously bullshit.
Right, but that's the mentality.
No, I understand the mentality. I'm just saying that he's flat out wrong here.
Oh.
You know what I mean? It obviously doesn't belong to them. He's talking about rightfully. Well, it was, whether rightfully or not, it was, it was won from them. It was taken from them. It was taken from them, yeah. And obviously, like I said, this was a lot of it started before the French Revolution. So you had before liberalism basically came around. Let's see, even before that. It was about the time of the Renaissance. So it was about the time that those Enlightenment ideals were coming about, which is where libertarian gets its start from, or at least its origins in the Enlightenment. So yeah, I mean, to try and hold those people accountable, to the NAP when they didn't even know what the hell that was. I mean, they didn't get naps and shit. So,
but
I don't know. I don't think that's a fair thing to do. I don't think that's a fair thing to say.
Right. Well, I mean, it's just as fair and justified to say as that present day people should be responsible for racism and the repercussions and the reparations.
Right. Well, the thing is, I do want to keep with their arguments that they're making here and not extrapolating.
Fuck that. That's the same. That's the mentality that breeds these kind of ideas. These are the same mentality, the same ideas. I'm not saying they're saying that. I'm just we're not going to get in trouble for saying something like that. I mean, fuck them. I mean, I'm not.
No, I'm not worried about getting in trouble. I'm just I'm worried about being intellectually honest.
Oh, because we're dealing with intellectuals.
Well, no, obviously not. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I don't want to be able to, have someone 15 years from now come back on here and be like, oh, look, he was just honest to this one guy at this one time. You know what I mean? So I just try, and not only that, but arguing against their actual points helps people who either don't know how to do that or, or looking to show in a clip or something like that. There's a lot of reasons why you want to be intellectually honest.
Yeah, these two make arguments
besides honesty. Yeah.
There's just a completely arbitrary metric. So, these things and they can kind of say oh, well, that's the classical left-wing move. You're bringing up ancient history to undermine current claims. But actually, very much in a macro sense, these things still play out day to day. And of course, those are where almost all redistribution claims come from. And this is the other kind of broader debunk that when you're talking about, as an example, even land reform in South Africa, nobody is proposing, certainly nobody in the ANC but not even like anybody like the EFF is saying like, oh, like an Afrikaner family farm, you got to go. Like, no, what they're proposing is massive land conglomerates and giant property holdings, most of which aren't even being used, be given back to families that literally had it directly stolen from them. So like, that's the other part too, is like, where did this history start? Like, these things weren't just sort of like magically bestowed upon people.
Yeah, so
absolutely. Like,
so here's the thing, right? Every country, every piece of land on this earth has been taken from someone by someone else, and then has been taken, most likely taken from someone else after that, and so on and so forth. So how about we agree to end that and respect people's property rights from here on out? Why don't we just go stop that and go from here? Because, I mean, you can't change history, for one. So you're just going to throw away the principle of property because someone a long time ago took some property from someone else? Doesn't make any damn sense. Why don't we just all agree not to take each other's property or destroy each other's property? Very simple.
But then I can't just come take your property.
Correct.
Well, I'd rather do that. I'd rather, if I come in and take your house from you, does that mean I win and I get to keep it?
I mean, if you kill me in the process, then yeah, I guess so.
No, I go to jail for murder.
Maybe.
I mean, it's really all that happens. I mean,
get caught.
there's no win-win here for me. It's not like the old days. You can't just go take property anymore.
Right. That's because we live in a country that respects property rights, for the most part.
Well, we have legalities surrounding them, but it's not
surrounding property rights.
But they're super legalities that make sure it's not yours in the first place, so it doesn't matter.
Right. So exactly, you're stealing from the government and not me. Right. And they don't like that for sure. The government's going to come after you. That's not good. It'll fuck you up.
Well, it does beg the question. It's like, it's a country, right? So, who is the ultimate owner of the country, right? In any country, obviously. Like, it's different for every country, right? But
no, it's all the government. The government owns all the land in their countries.
Right. They control it, I guess. They control it. They tell you what you can and can't do with it. I guess they own it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But do they? Is that not their? Should they not?
No. People should own their own land. I don't think that's that controversial of an opinion to have. No, you should own your own land. And actually own it, I mean.
But I shouldn't be able to take it away from you. That's the key thing.
Right, of course.
Damn, you take all the fun out of it.
I know, I'm sorry.
I mean, I think that, so there are two issues that are important here. So one is what's your underlying theory of distributive justice? And I think that it's important to go to that because
justice. Love it.
Now, see, now this is one, and what he's getting ready to talk about is going to be, is something that does come to my mind whenever we talk about libertarianism. Mm-hmm. So, but that distributive justice is a hell of a term.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a term, right?
That is some new speak right there, man. Orwell would be proud.
Distributive justice.
Justice. Everything is justice nowadays.
That almost sounds like something Bernie would have said.
Like they used to want, racial equality. Now they don't want that. They want racial justice, right? Social justice, same thing. Everything is justice now. That seems to be the new, the new adjective to describe their all their bullshit. Everything's justice. Justice.
Company man said his sister called him extremist today because he believes in absolute freedoms.
Yeah, dude, that is extreme. Extreme freedom.
Why would she call him extreme?
Now with 125% more freedom.
It's just gay. It's not extreme. It's just gay.
Yeah, dude, freedom is pretty gay.
Even though, of course, we do want to make a lot of these claims that you're talking about, both claims about stolen land being returned, or about the process of capitalist exploitation, stolen wages becoming profits. We also want to say, I mean, if you read Critique of the Gotha Program, Marx says that, even in a socialist society, of course, people aren't literally getting the full product of their labor because we need, he calls them deductions, but basically taxes to pay for schools and hospitals and those who can't work and all of that. But at the same time, the point you're raising is really important, and the response from them, at least if they want to be consistent, can't just be, oh, you're dredging up ancient history, because the whole difference between their view of what's a just history.
Because that wasn't my argument, but I'll give another one. The Native Americans did not believe in property rights, so there was no, so according to their logic, that would be just fine.
A question came to mind just now, and so since you said that, I'm going to go ahead and ask this question real quick, and hopefully I can say it right. Is it not the present day system of property rights that we have, the legalities around property rights, that gives a libertarian the motivation to say we should just stop taking property from one another and observe everybody's property rights, and property should be owned by the person who lives on it? Is it not the present day structure of those property rights that gives them the impetus to be able to say that, versus 200 years ago? How do you say let's all just respect everybody's property starting today, and look at people who go, why don't we back this up? Why don't we back this up to when we did have property here, right? Is that? I
mean, they did still respect property rights in certain ways. At least the normal citizen did. Government obviously has never given a shit about what you own, right? Because they own you, and so they own everything you own. So, but yeah, I mean, they've always had, oh yeah, that's old man Jenkins' farm. We can't go over there.
They called it staking a claim. You drove stakes down in the ground and laid out a property chunk. That was your property.
I'm sure there were people who, would pick someone else's stake up and move it, a couple 100 feet or something like that to give themselves more room. I'm sure that happened. But for the most part, people respected, hey, this is your plot, this is my plot. We might argue over whether this tree's on my side or your side. But for the most part, people respect the property rights.
Well, yeah, but that as where population comes in, that began to change, and that had to evolve, because you have a half dozen people living relatively close together with their land all staked out, but there's still some area that nobody has staked claim to, and so old man Johnson keeps going out every 2 or 3 months and moving the back 40, another back 40, and just keeps grabbing up some more property and grabbing up some more property, and nobody else is doing it. And then everybody's like, well, wait, why does he get to grab property? So laws.
Well, okay, does anyone already own that part?
Not necessarily. Nobody had laid claim to it.
Then I don't see the problem with that.
Well,
I mean, first of all, I don't think that would happen, because someone would lay claim to it as soon as he moved the back 40 the first time.
Okay.
People would be like, all right, fuck that. We're grabbing that shit up then. If we're playing like that, we're grabbing it up.
But when your property runs up against Mr. Johnson and he's very free with expanding his claim, well, it's not going to be surprising when he bumps his stake line 2 foot your way. And now you've got to get a third party involved.
Yeah, or then he's liable to get dealt with. I mean,
well, if you can prove it, how do you prove your claim? Then you have the function that's got to kick in bureaucracy, someone to keep record of the claim. So how do you get away from the government being in control of it when these things become so arbitrary? You have to have third parties involved in adjudicating it.
I mean, if there's a third party, it can be as simple as having the other local people around, and to come and try and mediate. I mean,
good Lord. Is that what you want to do with your day? I got to go down again, fucking old man Johnson.
Well, it's not like you're doing
spreading his stakes out. he's trying to choke up more of Maybell's land.
And then, like I said, you fucking like to get dealt with, man. That's it.
I'm supposed to be at work, but no, I got to go down and fucking help Miss Mabel keep her property line.
It doesn't take everyone, man.
It takes a village, John. It takes a village.
Oh, it doesn't, though.
And everybody else's view of what's just distribution is that everybody else says that, well, it matters what the outcome is, right? Like, it matters if the outcome is wildly unequal in some unfair way, that, like, this is morally important to whether or not these property claims are justified. Whereas what the hardcore libertarian wants to say is, nope, any outcome is fine, doesn't matter how unequal it is, doesn't matter if, some people, live in the lap of luxury or get to have jobs on The View because of who their dad is, and, other people can, have trouble, knowing where the next meal is coming from because of who their parents are. It's all okay as long as you can trace it back to a just process, right? As long as nobody's rights were violated along the way to get in there, you can have any outcome you want. And if they don't make that move, then they just have no basis for thinking that this would be justified. So it's really important to them that they make that move. But then, of course, the economic history of the real world is never like that. It's not that, like you would get the impression sometimes, like reading people like Robert Nozick or Murray Rothbard, that here's the economic history of the world, that Adam and Eve and their descendants spread out from the Garden of Eden, like making like freeholding unowned property, and then there were a bunch of free market exchanges, and then we got here. So whereas
that's not at all
in the actual case, even in Europe, capitalism emerged from feudalism, a very non-consensual process of enclosures and all of that. And here in the New World, we had a process that was a million times more horrifying than that. It makes what happened in Europe look cozy and consensual. We're literally like in the American economy,
first of all,
literally built up on the backs of slaves on land stolen from genocide victims.
Right, and that's literally where these things come from, and that's where it's like, again, of course, we should morally object to that, but that's also where it's like, hey, this isn't just about the morals of it. This is also the literal material reality of where these things come from. So then if you're still, and then I think that kind of just reveals like what this really just comes down to is just establishing a rationale for just a pre-existing inequity and trying to turn it into some type of pseudo-hippie gobbledygook. And there you have the non-aggression principle. Ben, thank you for the debunk. The book.
Yeah, that's enough of that.
So, I don't know. The thing he talks about a little bit there at the end that often comes up for me, and it is the idea that I get the where he comes from when he talks about that libertarians seem awfully property based, as it were. Right, I can see that somewhat, but he does talk about how they don't really look at, and I'm gonna for want of a better term, the inequity of the human condition, as it were, where some people are wealthy and some people are not. That libertarians are very apathetic about it. In a sense that it's not their problem if some people have a lot of the money and a lot of the people don't have hardly any money. It's not a big deal. The system will sort it out, and if people are left behind, they're just left behind. I have trouble not getting that sense of apathy from you, even when talking about libertarianism.
I get it, and it's mostly because that only comes up in the middle of some sort of argument. And so when you bring that up, it's like, okay, this is completely beside the point. Let's put that on hold and let's move on to like the actual part of the the actual argument itself, not but whataboutisms, right? Let's talk about the principle as opposed to these outlying cases or these but what about whatever. But no, I mean, we've talked about this plenty of times, about like the concept of charity, for one, being really big. I mean, we've done that on this show plenty of times. We've done our charity drives, we've done that kind of stuff. We don't have to do that. but and like we're giving to people who need it, who
Right,
probably can't afford things, and that's
and I can understand that what you're saying. What I guess it's more to the point that these arguments, these principles that around that underpin libertarianism are fine and well and good. But for libertarianism to have any real impact, it's got to seriously address issues that are going on in the present day. We've got major inequities in the system. We've got major inequities in the population, and if the approach from libertarians is, well, there's some things we can institute and it'll all sort itself out.
Well, okay, yeah, so that is the point of laissez-faire, capitalism, is just free market capitalism, is that it will sort itself out. There'll be, ebbs and flows like any other economy, but it's much easier to bounce back from hardship when, freedom is allowed. That's why centrally planned economies don't work, because they can't predict for everything, and so they fail. Whereas with the free market, it's much more flexible and much more easily adaptable, so that when shit hits the fan in a way that you don't anticipate, it bounces back a lot easier, which means that there are less poor people, less starving people than there would be otherwise.
Or at least that's the hope.
Well, no, I mean, we can see that. Back when there was, less, more laissez-faire.
But less people.
Sure,
right?
less people, but it scales just the same.
That's
why it wouldn't scale.
And I think that's where pushback comes from the left when looking at libertarian ideas, is the idea that, okay, so yes, we institute these things and it does sort itself out, but we can expect that there's going to be, I'll use the term casualties along the way, right? I mean, there's going to be those that are left behind.
Always.
In a sense, right?
Always.
And so that then becomes the heart of it for them. Well, then it sounds like you're opting for acceptable losses, that we can just let disenfranchised people go by the wayside to sort it out for everybody else, and that's hard for them to stomach.
I'll respond this way to that argument. If someone says that to me, well then, it seems like you care an awful lot about those people. Why don't you go take care of them then? I think that would be a very commendable thing. I think that would be amazing of you to do that. You would actually be a really good person if you went and took care of people who fell through the cracks or who, can't do it for themselves. I can't think of much more of a noble cause for a person to undertake.
Yeah,
and then, of course, you're going to get a multitude of excuses about why that can't happen or whatever, But that's my point is, if you're so concerned about that, then go do something about it. Don't leave it up to the state to do something and bungle it and kill 10 times as many people while trying to save one. It's hypocrisy and bullshit. They don't actually care about people at all. It's just but what about Mo-Woodism,
Right. Well, I mean, and like I said, I mean, this is what you're gonna, this has got to be at the core of arguments is, when looking at libertarianism, is particularly from the left, I should say, is this idea that, I know how the left thinks. Everybody's important. Everybody's important, and everybody should be, be taken care of. And
I agree, they should be.
So when you
but when
you run into a mindset where it's, well, we can't take care of everybody, so some people aren't going to make it on the boat. That's the hardest pill for them to swallow, because of course they're advocates for everyone.
Right. Well, not everyone.
Well, everyone that thinks properly.
Yeah. Everyone that thinks correctly or is deemed too stupid to think correctly.
Right. So and so it's easy to when you're going to run into that kind of roadblock with someone on the left, I honestly believe that roadblock in and of itself spawns others, much like the non-aggression principle, where you start to twist it into, well, the actions that you take in the non-aggression principle are aggressive in nature themselves. Because of course, then it goes into thought policing, right? When I talked when I say what I mentioned about violence, well, now you're getting into thought violence whenever you're putting that no trespassing sign out,
right?
But it's not violence to redistribute wealth because you're not coercing them; you're just taking what's owed to the rest of the population.
Yeah, somehow there's this magical debt that
that
you suddenly accrue when you
you
reach a certain threshold. You suddenly accrue this debt that you owe. All of a sudden, it just doesn't make any goddamn sense, dude.
So and therein is the where you get into a rub with libertarians in being successful in the political arena is it's apathy is easily made into a demon is easily demonized. It can be demonized
apathy,
easily.
Though.
But it can be demonized into apathy.
Yeah,
I mean, it can easily be seen as apathy, from the right perspective. So once you start demonizing that, and you let people know that libertarians don't actually care about the people as much as they care about their own selves and their own things, which is exactly what the left cares about, as long as well, it begins to tear down any argument the libertarians can make. I mean, I can understand the non-aggression principle. I do. But I won't be able to argue against the fact that there's a lot of gray area that can be created with the NAP, like anything else, to where you do need a third party to arbitrate a lot of things that would happen in regards to some sort of non-aggression principle being instituted. Because, of course, to get anybody to follow it, you've got to institute it as a rule set, John. I mean, you can't just say, hey, because you tell people, hey, we want everybody to wear masks, and they're like, fuck you, I don't want to wear a mask.
Well, there's a difference between a state and a hierarchy. Those are two different things. One, basically, all states are a hierarchy, but not all hierarchies are a state, right? So, like, just because you don't have the state does not mean that you can't have someone mediate. It doesn't mean that there's not someone in charge of either a project or, an entire, neighborhood or something like that. It doesn't mean that there's not someone in charge there.
I got you.
Yeah.
But so, and again, to me, it ultimately is just like, okay, I get it. Decentralizing, but you're still putting, you still have to have some sort of authority, even on the small scale. There's going to have to be somebody there to adjudicate this stuff, to carry out laws, to do all this stuff. It's just a smaller state versus the larger picture. And Company Man says something. He says he definitely holds apathy for people who believe in the current systems trying to tell me what to do. I wouldn't help them. Now, I want to say something.
That's fair.
So, hold on. I have to disagree with that from this standpoint. The way that people feel in that perspective is not entirely their fault. We have a system currently in place that has conditioned multiple generations. If you look back, the present day climate that we're in has been conditioned into us. You can look at Boomers, Gen X, Millennial, and Gen Z, and you can look at the progression of the brainwashing, the conditioning that has gone on. You can that's the differences in the generations right now, is the level of manipulation of thinking and culture and society that has gone on over the last 50, 60 plus years. So we have to consider how much do we hold those people accountable for where they stand?
I mean, so you have to, yeah, I would say that you should probably try and get through to them. It's not always possible, of course. But yeah, there is a certain point where you just have to write them off as a loss. And, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, not everyone is going to see through that, and not everyone's going to want to be convinced. And if someone doesn't want to be convinced of something, then they're not going to be, and that's just that.
Elephant Man says there is no perfect solution.
Of course
and
not.
No, there
is
isn't.
A final one, though. No.
Well, I mean, I won't say that there's perfect solutions, but I will say this. I think that there are some solutions that could work pretty well, but people just need to stop fighting it. They just need to stop fighting it.
Just let the state do everything.
Right?
Just let go. And
I mean, listen. Let me put it to you this way. Maybe this is going to sound a little nihilist. I don't know, but what are we all working so hard for anyway? What are we trying to accomplish here?
Yeah.
Ultimately, as humans, even let's go to that greatest extent. What the fuck are we accomplishing here? Where are we going? What are we doing? We're just
breeding.
We're surviving.
Breeding, surviving, trying to make the world better for our progeny.
Oh, speaking of breeding, now I'm gonna give a little little preview of what we're going to talk about for a little while on Friday. I saw an article, and I want to get a little deeper into this because I think the ramifications from this are where my mind went were kind of interesting. But anyway, it says that the population increase that we've experienced in this country over the last quite a few years, many years, has nothing to do with Caucasians. It's exclusively because of minority groups in this country. That our growth, population-wise, is specifically because of them, not because of Caucasian white folks, as it were, in this country for many, many, many years. And that leads to some very interesting questions about culpability in present-day situations. So I'm just going to put that out there. I kind of want to talk about that a little bit. I think it'll be interesting to see where my mind went on that. Yeah, or at least I found it interesting because I'm like, okay, now we have a whole new set of folks to put to blame for a few things, I believe.
Yeah, that's not how that's going to work out, I promise.
No, probably not. But,
dude. We got some chats to go through real quick. Two of them in particular. One said, Ed says, guys, I got my first Ninjagini tonight. Awesome. How about some of that distributive justice you keep hearing about?
What's a Ninjagini?
It's the 1,000 lino? Yeah, 1,000. Yeah. And then Company Man wants Robert to proof and publish his new book.
I can proof. I don't do publishing, but depending on what it is, I might have avenues. But I'm more than happy to proof it for you.
Yeah. He's going to call it breeding and raising youth as a libertarian. Were they cattle? You could just breed them and raise them and then slaughter them as libertarians. That's fucked up, man. That's fucked up.
But you realize that if you really want to raise a libertarian in the present day, to really hold to real libertarian values, you can't let them have access to TVs, computers, mobile phones, anything connected to the internet.
And you've got to order him around and beat him daily so that he grows resentful towards authority. And
See, you've already started off wrong. You've assumed it's a boy.
That's true. Mostly because I don't envision beating women. So, sorry if my first, violent thought goes to another male. Maybe I'm just not as sexist as I thought. I'll try harder.
Wait. So Elephant Man is saying don't do it. Who is he saying don't do it to?
Wait,
Because
what?
he says he's got seven studies to pull from.
Ed just redistributed Justice League a diamond to us. Awesome, thank you.
I like that redistribution Ed does. It's so
you know what?
It's kinky when he does it because it's just not like him.
I think I'm starting to become a leftist, guys. Give me all your money.
Right? Give me my Gibbs.
Gibbs monies, please. Okay, thanks.
I'm an equal opportunity libertarian. I'll beat a woman, hypothetically. Wow.
In a video game, yeah.
So, Elephant Man, if you're talking about studies in regard to what I was just talking about, I wouldn't mind talking to you because, if I kind of want to talk about this because I think it's interesting. If it's true, that's why I've got to do a little more research into it and see. Don't do birth rate discussion.
Yeah. That leads to all kinds of accusations of mo racisms. Because it's overpopulation is affecting climate change, but
no, it's not.
Don't how dare you talk about rising birth rates of minorities? Fucking white man, shut up. Like it's so stupid.
Well,
Gib, John 2020. That's right, I did say that. Gib monies, please. Give roads. Please give roads.
All right. Well, Elephant Man, you're going to have to give me a good reason. So reach out. Google women's education in relation to birth rate. What? Women's education in relation to birth rate.
All right. God.
Reach out to me on Discord. Give me some idea of what you're talking about because I'm wondering if we're talking about the same thing or if we're not. I think maybe we are, but I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know.
But anyway, John, let's get the hell out of here. So I'm going to point you in the direction of things you need to say.
Are you pointing? Yeah. I was watching DLive. There's stuff down here. And hopefully this will make it back on YouTube, in which case there's in the same direction. But yes, in our description, we have like buttons. I'm not sure if DLive has that, but I'll just do the standard YouTube spiel. That's fine. Description. We have links. Twitter @TheGenGapP. Discord. Awesome place. Go there. Be there. Awesome fun. Super happy.
The link should be in
Great
DLive
times.
too.
It should be. And then we've got freedomscoop.com. We can find all of our stuff. And J. Edgar, who's over there in the chat, as always, which is awesome. We've got Stephen Ignoramus over there. We've got Wyatt from Roundtable Decision. We've got RRC, Our Rated Conservative. And Freckles and Brit Show is over there now, too.
Yes,
Make sure you go. Yes, it does, Ed. Only if you send 2, though.
Greedy bastard.
I know. I was going to try and squeeze up one more, But yeah, Freedom Scoop. You can also get our t-shirts over there. And our mugs. And if you put in the code GenGap at the checkout, you'll get 15% off. Sorry. 15% off.
Calm down there, Sal.
I know. I was just getting excited. I was starting to give stuff away. 15%. That's good enough.
At 15%, we're already giving it away.
We're crazy, Bob. No.
All right, so we're going to get the hell out of here. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight and talking stuff. Please, Elephant Man, reach out to me on Discord and tell me why you don't want me to throw my lack of career away. But anyway, we will be back on Friday for our regular show at 8:30, and then, of course, we'll also be back again next Monday for our next Shootin' the Shit episode at 9:30. Both of those are p.m. Eastern Time, the only true time zone, the only one that matters. Anything else is just, I don't know, left behind.
It's just fake.
All right, John, so don't hurt anybody. Always make sure and take your nap with you.
I'll be taking a nap here soon.
The fucking nap. Why couldn't they have? They should have thought of a better name Because it just always makes me tired when I think about it. It really does.
It does too. It
right?
makes me tired too, but for a different reason. But I have to explain to some idiot why you shouldn't be touching other people's stuff.
But did you see how their
Shit
stuff
that you
was
learn
dressed?
as a toddler.
Did
know?
you see how their stuff was dressed? I'm
Yeah,
just saying,
enough.
it was asking
Fair
for
enough.
it. All right,
Fair
we're
enough.
going to get the hell out of here. Thanks for stopping by, folks, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace out.
See ya.
The war will begin.